Have you ever felt overwhelmed by sadness? Like there's a heavy weight you just can't shake off? Or maybe you wonder why life seems so difficult. No matter how hard you try to stay positive, depression can feel like an uninvited guest, draining your energy and leaving you stuck in a dark place. But what if the answer to feeling better is something much simpler than you think? Can Buddhism, with its ancient wisdom, help you find peace during these tough times? Imagine, for a moment, a person lost in the middle of a forest. The trees seem endless, and no matter how many steps they take, they can't find their way out. The sadness and confusion they feel are like the trees around them, tall and blocking the way. But what if that person suddenly learned to look up, seeing the sky and understanding the path they need to follow? This shift in perspective is what Buddhism offers, a way to find light even when you're surrounded by darkness. Welcome to Wisdom Woven, a place where we share insights from Buddhism to help you live a life of peace, understanding, and happiness. If you're struggling with depression, you're not alone. Many people around the world are searching for answers to life's difficult moments. But don't worry. In this video, we'll explore simple but powerful teachings that can bring hope and healing to your life. There are so many views on this channel, but only 0.2% subscribe. So please like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel, and please drop down your thoughts in the comments. In the next few moments, we'll dive deep into understanding how Buddhism can offer a new perspective on life's challenges. Whether you're feeling stuck, sad, or confused, these teachings can guide you through the storm. So, stay with us as we unlock the secrets to healing your mind and finding true happiness. The illusion of self and suffering. Have you ever wondered why you feel so much pain inside? Why, no matter how hard you try to push it away, it keeps coming back, like a shadow that follows you everywhere. This is the first step in understanding depression, the feeling that something is wrong, but you don't know what it is. You may think the source of your pain is something outside of you, like your circumstances, your job, or your relationships. But in Buddhism, we are taught that suffering doesn't come from the outside. It comes from within, from the way we see ourselves in the world around us. Let me tell you a simple story. Imagine a river flowing gently through the land. On its surface, the water is calm, reflecting the beauty of the trees and sky around it. But if you look closer, you will see that there are many rocks beneath the water's surface. These rocks are hidden, but they cause ripples and disturbances in the flow of the water. In the same way, our minds are filled with hidden thoughts and emotions. These thoughts, like the rocks, disturb the peace of our minds and create suffering. But unlike the river, we often don't see these hidden thoughts for what they are. They seem to be part of who we are. In Buddhism, this is called the illusion of self. We believe that the thoughts we have, the emotions we feel, and the experiences we go through define who we are. We start to think that I am sad, I am angry, or I am broken. But in reality, these thoughts and feelings are not us. They are just passing clouds in the sky of our mind. If we can learn to step back and observe these thoughts without getting caught up in them, we can begin to see that we are not our suffering. This is not easy, and it takes time. Imagine you're holding a piece of paper with a small dot on it. If you focus only on the dot, that is all you will see. The rest of the paper, the empty space around the dot, will be ignored. This is what happens when we focus only on our suffering. We fixate on the pain, the sadness, and the negative thoughts, and we forget that there is much more to life than that. But what if you could look at the whole paper, not just the dot? What if you could see the vastness of the sky, the beauty of the trees, and the calmness of the river? When we learn to step back and see the bigger picture, we can begin to see that our suffering is only one small part of who we are. Buddhism teaches us that the root of suffering is attachment, the attachment to our thoughts, our emotions, and our identity. We hold on to these things tightly, thinking they define us, but in doing so, we trap ourselves in a cycle of pain. We get attached to the idea that we are a certain way. I am depressed, I am anxious, I am not good enough. These beliefs create a prison in our minds. But the truth is, none of these things define us. We are not our thoughts. We are not our feelings. We are something much greater, much more expansive than that. But how can we break free from this illusion? How can we stop identifying with our suffering and start seeing ourselves clearly? The first step is mindfulness. Mindfulness is the practice of being aware of what is happening in the present moment, without judgment. When we practice mindfulness, we can observe our thoughts and feelings without getting attached to them. We can notice the sadness, the anger, the fear, but we don't have to become those emotions. We can simply watch them, like clouds passing in the sky. When we begin to understand that our thoughts and emotions are not who we are, we start to feel a sense of freedom. We no longer have to be ruled by them. Imagine a person walking through a storm. The wind howls, the rain pours down, and the person feels cold and miserable. But then, they find shelter. The storm is still raging outside, but they are no longer affected by it. They are safe and protected. This is what mindfulness does for us. It helps us find shelter from the storm of our own minds. We can observe the chaos without getting caught up in it. This shift in perspective is the key to breaking free from suffering. When we stop identifying with our pain, we begin to see it for what it truly is, a temporary experience, a passing moment. We start to understand that just as the storm will eventually pass, so too will our suffering. It is not permanent. It does not define us. And this realization brings peace. But there is another important teaching in Buddhism that can help us even more. It is the teaching of impermanence. Nothing in life is permanent. Everything changes, and everything passes away. Our thoughts, our emotions, our experiences, they all come and go. The sadness you feel today may not be the same tomorrow. The anger you have now may fade away. This is the nature of life. It is constantly changing, constantly flowing like the river. When we understand impermanence, we can let go of our attachment to suffering. We no longer need to hold on to the belief that our pain will last forever. Instead, we can let it flow through us, knowing that it will pass. Just like the river carries the rocks downstream, our suffering can be carried away by the flow of time. We don't need to hold on to it. We don't need to resist it. We can simply let it go. This is the heart of the Buddhist path. Letting go. Letting go of the illusion of self. Letting go of the belief that we are our thoughts and emotions. Letting go of the attachment to suffering. And when we let go, we make space for something much greater. Peace, joy, and freedom. So, the next time you feel overwhelmed by sadness or pain, remember this. You are not your suffering. You are not your thoughts. You are not your emotions. You are something far greater, far more beautiful, and far more powerful than you can imagine. And by practicing mindfulness, by understanding impermanence, and by letting go of attachment, you can begin to break free from the illusion of self and find the peace you've been searching for. The path is not easy, but it is worth it. And every step you take brings you closer to the freedom and happiness you deserve. Breaking free from negative thought patterns. We all have thoughts, but not all of them are our friends. Have you ever noticed how a single negative thought can spiral out of control? One moment, you're thinking about a small mistake you made. In the next, it feels like the whole world is falling apart. This is what happens when we let negative thoughts take the lead. They shape how we feel and act, pulling us into a cycle of worry and despair. But what if there was a way to break free from this cycle? What if we didn't have to be prisoners of our own minds? Buddhism teaches us that the mind can be our greatest friend or our worst enemy. It's like a garden. If we plant seeds of negativity, that's all we'll see growing. But if we choose to plant seeds of peace, kindness, and understanding, that's the garden we'll nurture. It's all about what we choose to focus on. This is called mindfulness, the practice of being aware of our thoughts without letting them control us. But how can we stop our minds from running wild? The first step is to realize that we don't have to believe every thought that comes to us. Our thoughts are not facts. They're just clouds passing by. Just because a thought pops into your head doesn't mean it's true or that it defines you. For example, you might think, "I'm not good enough," or "nothing ever goes right." These thoughts feel real, but they don't define who you are. You have the power to notice these thoughts and let them pass without getting caught up in them. One powerful way to break free from negative thought patterns is through meditation. Meditation helps you train your mind to focus on the present moment. It's like exercising a muscle. The more you practice, the stronger your mind becomes at staying calm and centered. When you meditate, you learn to observe your thoughts without judgment. You don't push them away, but you also don't get attached to them. You simply let them come and go, like waves on the ocean. Imagine you're sitting by the ocean. At first, the waves are strong, crashing against the shore, pulling your attention away. But as you sit quietly, you notice something. The waves start to calm down. The water becomes peaceful, and you can see clearly. Your mind is like that ocean. At first, your thoughts may seem loud and overwhelming, but with practice, they begin to settle, and you find peace beneath the surface. The key is understanding that your thoughts are not who you are. You are not your worries, your fears, or your doubts. You are the awareness that notices them. You are the stillness beneath the noise. When you realize this, you can start to shift your relationship with your thoughts. Instead of reacting to them, you can choose how to respond. One of the most common negative thought patterns is the tendency to overthink. When we face a difficult situation, we replay it over and over in our minds, looking for answers, trying to figure out what went wrong. But overthinking only makes things worse. It keeps us trapped in the past, and the more we dwell on it, the more anxious and stressed we become. Buddhism teaches us that we don't have to figure everything out right away. Sometimes, the best thing we can do is to let go of the need for control and trust that things will unfold as they should. Another important lesson from Buddhism is the concept of impermanence. Everything in life is constantly changing. Our thoughts, emotions, and even our circumstances. Just as a storm eventually passes, so too will the difficult thoughts and feelings you're experiencing. They may feel overwhelming in the moment, but they are not permanent. This understanding can help you find comfort during tough times. When you realize that no situation, no matter how bad, will last forever, you begin to feel less fear and more acceptance. So, how do we put this into practice? The first step is to become more aware of your thoughts. Pay attention to when your mind starts to spiral into negativity. Are you thinking about something that happened in the past? Are you worrying about the future? Are you telling yourself something unkind? The more you notice these thoughts, the more power you have to choose whether or not to engage with them. Next, practice letting go. Imagine your thoughts are like leaves floating down a river. You don't need to hold on to them. You can simply watch them drift away. Every time a negative thought arises, gently remind yourself, this is just a thought. I don't need to hold on to it. With time, you'll find that it becomes easier to let go, and your mind will become less cluttered. Another helpful tool is affirmations. When negative thoughts arise, counter them with positive statements. For example, if you think, I'm not good enough, replace that thought with, I am enough just as I am. It may feel awkward at first, but with practice, you'll start to believe these affirmations, and they will become a powerful tool for shifting your mindset. Lastly, remember to be patient with yourself. Breaking free from negative thought patterns is not something that happens overnight. It takes time, practice, and consistency. But every small step you take brings you closer to freedom. Every time you choose to let go of a negative thought, you're rewiring your brain to think more positively. The journey to breaking free from negative thought patterns is not easy, but it is worth it. By practicing mindfulness, letting go of control, and embracing impermanence, you can find peace even in the midst of chaos. You can change the way you think, and in doing so, change the way you experience life. Remember, you are not your thoughts. You are the peaceful awareness behind them. And when you begin to live from that place of awareness, you'll find that life becomes much lighter and more beautiful. The power of mindfulness and healing. In the stillness of the mind, we find the key to overcoming depression. But what does it mean to be mindful? Imagine your thoughts as a busy market, people rushing everywhere, noise, confusion, and clutter. This is often what happens in our minds when we feel overwhelmed. But mindfulness is like stepping out of that market and finding a quiet corner where you can breathe deeply and observe what's happening around you. It's not about forcing your mind to be silent, but about being aware of what's there, without judgment or fear. Every moment can be a moment of mindfulness, but it requires practice. It's as if you're standing at the edge of a river, watching the water flow by. The river represents your thoughts and feelings, and you are not the water. You are the observer. The water will continue to flow, just as your thoughts and feelings will come and go. When you practice mindfulness, you stop trying to control them, and instead allow them to exist without being overwhelmed. You don't cling to every thought, and you don't push them away either. You simply let them be, watching with awareness. This simple practice can begin to heal the wounds of the mind. It helps you understand that not every thought you have is true, and not every emotion is permanent. Mindfulness teaches you to observe, but not to attach. In times of depression, we often get caught in a cycle of negative thoughts. These thoughts come so quickly and with such force that it feels impossible to escape. But through mindfulness, we can start to create space between the thoughts. Instead of identifying with them, we can simply acknowledge them. Ah, that's a sad thought. I see you, but you don't have to control me. In Buddhism, there is a saying, the mind is everything. What you think, you become. This is the core of mindfulness. The thoughts we entertain shape the way we see the world and, ultimately, the way we experience life. If our thoughts are clouded with negativity, our perception of reality will be clouded too. But when we become mindful, we begin to untangle those thoughts and see the world as it truly is, free of the heavy layers of judgment and emotion that depression often brings. So how do we begin? The simplest way is through breathing. When we feel lost in sadness or overwhelmed by anxiety, the first step is to focus on the breath. It may sound too simple, but breathing is the bridge between the body and the mind. When we breathe slowly and deeply, it signals to the brain that it is safe to relax. In that moment, we can begin to step out of the storm of emotions and into a place of calm. Try this. Sit quietly and close your eyes. Place one hand on your chest and the other on your belly. Now, take a deep breath in, feeling your belly rise with the air. Hold it for a moment, then slowly release the breath, feeling your belly fall. Repeat this several times, focusing only on the sensation of the breath entering and leaving your body. As you do this, notice how your thoughts start to slow down, and a sense of peace begins to settle in. In Buddhism, this practice is called anapanasati, which translates to mindfulness of breathing. It is a foundational practice that can help ease the mind and provide clarity. The breath is always with us, so it is an anchor we can return to whenever the waves of depression start to pull us under. This practice doesn't require any special skill or equipment. It is something anyone can do, anywhere, anytime. But mindfulness doesn't just stop with breathing. It extends to everything we do. Whether you're eating, walking, or even washing dishes, mindfulness teaches you to be fully present in the moment. Think about the last time you ate a meal. Did you really taste the food? Or were you thinking about something else, perhaps feeling guilty or anxious? Mindfulness helps us to truly engage with our lives instead of rushing through them, unaware of the small joys and moments that could bring us peace. When we practice mindfulness in everyday tasks, we train our minds to stay present. Depression often arises when we spend too much time in the past or the future, regretful of what has happened or anxious about what might come. But mindfulness allows us to stay grounded in the now, which is the only place where healing can truly happen. Another powerful mindfulness practice is body scanning. This involves paying attention to each part of your body, noticing any tension or discomfort without judgment. Start at your toes and slowly move up, mentally scanning each part of your body. If you find tension, simply observe it without trying to fix it. Just breathe and allow your awareness to soften the tension. This practice helps release the physical manifestations of stress and depression, which can often show up in our bodies as tightness, pain, or fatigue. One of the most profound ways mindfulness can help with depression is by breaking the cycle of rumination. When you are stuck in depression, your mind often loops around the same negative thoughts over and over again. These thoughts can become so familiar that they feel like your reality. Mindfulness breaks this cycle by creating a pause between your thoughts and your actions. With practice, you can start to see these thoughts for what they are, passing mental events that do not define you. When you start to separate yourself from your thoughts, you begin to see them as transient. You realize that you are not your sadness, and your sadness is not permanent. It's simply one emotion, one thought, in a long line of experiences. And just as the clouds will part to reveal the sun, your sadness too will fade. This is the nature of life. Everything changes, but it's not always easy, is it? The pull of depression can be strong, and the habit of negative thinking can feel hard to break. But don't be discouraged. Mindfulness is not about achieving perfection or getting rid of negative thoughts. It's about developing a gentle awareness of your experiences without judgment. The more you practice, the more you'll begin to notice small changes. Moments of peace where there was once anxiety, moments of light where there was once darkness. Buddhism teaches that suffering is a part of life, but it also teaches that we are not trapped in our suffering. Through mindfulness, we can begin to transform our experience of pain into an opportunity for growth. Instead of running from our emotions, we can face them with compassion and understanding. Instead of allowing depression to define us, we can learn to navigate it with wisdom and clarity. Remember, healing takes time, and mindfulness is a practice. You won't always feel better after one session, but every moment of awareness is a step towards healing. You are not alone in this journey, and every breath you take brings you closer to the peace you seek. Keep breathing, keep observing, and trust that with time, the clouds will clear, and you will find your way back to the light. Detachment, freedom from emotional chains. When we face difficult emotions like sadness, anger, or fear, we often get stuck in them. These feelings can feel like chains, holding us down and preventing us from moving forward. It's easy to believe that our emotions are a part of who we are, and sometimes they can seem so overwhelming that it feels impossible to break free from them. But what if I told you that you don't have to be controlled by your emotions? What if you could find freedom by simply understanding them? Detachment doesn't mean being cold or uncaring. It doesn't mean ignoring or suppressing your feelings. In fact, it's the opposite. Detachment, in Buddhist teachings, is about seeing things as they truly are without getting caught up in them. It's about understanding that emotions are temporary. They rise, they fall, and they pass. Just like waves in the ocean, you are not your emotions. You are the observer of them. Imagine you're standing by a river, watching the water flow. The water is constantly moving, changing, and flowing past you. You don't try to stop it, control it, or even follow it. You simply watch. This is what detachment is like. Standing back and observing your emotions without getting swept away by them. But how do we do this? The key lies in mindfulness and awareness. When you are aware of your thoughts and feelings, you begin to notice that they don't last forever. They don't define you. You are the one who chooses how to react to them. Just because a feeling of sadness arises doesn't mean it has to control your day. Just because anger flares up doesn't mean you have to act on it. You can observe it, understand it, and let it pass without clinging to it. In Buddhism, there's a teaching about the Four Noble Truths, which helps explain why we suffer. The first truth is that suffering is a part of life. We all face challenges, sadness, loss, and pain. The second truth is that suffering comes from attachment. We attach to our desires, to our wants, and to our emotions. We think that we need to hold on to certain things to feel happy or safe. But this attachment only causes more pain because nothing in life is permanent. The third truth is that it's possible to end suffering. And the way to end suffering is through detachment. By letting go of our attachments, we free ourselves from the chains that hold us down. We stop clinging to things that cause us pain. And the fourth truth shows us the path to freedom. This path is called the Noble Eightfold Path, a guide for living a life of wisdom, ethical conduct, and mental discipline. You see, when we are attached to our emotions, we believe that we need to act on them immediately. If we feel angry, we lash out. If we feel sad, we may retreat and isolate ourselves. But this reaction is what keeps us trapped in the cycle of suffering. The more we act on our emotions, the stronger the attachment becomes, and the more difficult it is to break free. However, detachment teaches us that we don't have to act on every emotion we feel. You don't need to let your feelings dictate your actions. Instead, you can step back and ask yourself, what is this feeling trying to teach me? Why am I feeling this way? Is this feeling permanent? This pause before reacting gives you the space to make a choice that comes from a place of wisdom, not from impulse. Detachment also helps us see that life is full of change, and change is inevitable. We don't have control over everything that happens around us, but we do have control over how we respond. Life will throw many challenges our way, and it's natural to feel pain, disappointment, and frustration. But when you detach from the need to control every situation, you allow yourself the freedom to adapt and move through life with more ease. This doesn't mean that you stop caring about the things that matter to you. You can still love, care, and invest in your relationships and your dreams. Detachment means that you no longer depend on external circumstances or emotions to determine your happiness. Your happiness comes from within, from your ability to stay grounded and centered, no matter what is happening around you. Imagine a tree in the wind. The branches may sway and bend, but the tree itself remains rooted in the ground. It's not shaken by the wind because it knows that the storm will pass. This is how you can be. You can be like that tree, firmly rooted in your inner peace, no matter how strong the winds of emotion blow. Sometimes, when we are struggling with depression or sadness, it's because we are attached to the idea of how we should feel or how we should be. We create expectations for ourselves, and when reality doesn't match those expectations, we feel like we've failed. But detachment allows us to let go of these rigid ideas and simply accept things as they are. It's okay to not feel okay sometimes. It's okay to be sad or frustrated. These emotions don't define who you are. You are still whole, still worthy, and still capable of healing. The beauty of detachment is that it brings us back to the present moment. So often, we get lost in the past or the future. We dwell on past mistakes or worry about future problems. But detachment helps us focus on the here and now. It teaches us to accept what is, without clinging to it or pushing it away. When we live fully in the present, we are free from the weight of past regrets and future anxieties. Letting go of attachments doesn't happen overnight. It's a process and it takes time, but every small step you take toward detachment brings you closer to inner peace. You may not be able to control your emotions, but you can control how you respond to them. You can choose to step back, breathe, and let go of the need to cling to every thought and feeling that arises. Remember, you are not your emotions. You are not your thoughts. You are the awareness behind them, the one who can observe and choose. Detachment is the key to breaking free from the emotional chains that bind you. It's not about running away from your feelings, but about understanding them, accepting them, and letting them go when the time is right. In this way, detachment is not a way of shutting yourself off from life, but a way of embracing life fully. It's about living with open hands, knowing that everything in life, good or bad, is temporary. Nothing lasts forever, not even your most difficult emotions. When you learn to let go, you create space for new experiences, new growth, and new happiness to enter your life. So, let go of the emotional chains that hold you down. Free yourself from the need to control, the need to react, and the need to cling. Embrace the freedom that comes with detachment, and watch as your mind and heart become lighter, clearer, and more at peace. The middle path to inner peace. Imagine you're walking along a path. On one side, there are sharp rocks, and on the other, there's deep mud. You know that stepping too far in either direction will cause you pain. But if you walk carefully, right in the middle, the path feels smooth, and you can move forward without too much trouble. This middle path is what Buddhism teaches us to follow. It's called the middle way, and it can bring peace to your mind, even when everything around you feels like chaos. In life, it's easy to swing from one extreme to another. You might find yourself overworking, stressing yourself out, and trying to control every little thing. Or you could be on the other side, avoiding responsibilities, feeling numb, and letting life slip by without direction. Both of these extremes create suffering, but the middle path is about finding balance. It's about living with awareness, making wise decisions, and avoiding excess or deficiency. The Buddha taught that suffering comes from craving, clinging, and pushing too hard in either direction. When you want something too much, or when you avoid things out of fear, you're actually creating more suffering for yourself. But the middle path invites you to live simply, without clinging to desires or pushing away things you don't want. Instead of living in extremes, you learn to embrace the present moment and allow life to unfold naturally. One of the biggest challenges for anyone experiencing depression or sadness is the feeling of being stuck. When you're overwhelmed, it's easy to focus on the things you can't control. Your past mistakes, your fears for the future, or the heavy weight of emotions that seem never-ending. This often leads to an unbalanced approach to life. Either you focus too much on avoiding pain, or you throw yourself into it, thinking it's the only way to survive. But neither way brings true peace. The Buddha's middle path teaches us that it's possible to be mindful of both the good and bad in life, without being controlled by them. When you're walking the middle way, you're not pretending that things are perfect, but you're also not getting lost in negativity. You acknowledge your suffering, but you don't let it define you. Instead of resisting life's challenges, you accept them as they are and take thoughtful action. Think about it this way. If you're feeling anxious or sad, you don't need to push away those feelings, nor do you need to dive deeper into them, believing they are who you are. The middle path says to acknowledge the feeling without letting it take over your life. You can simply sit with the feeling, let it be, and then move on when the time is right. By accepting life as it comes, both the pleasant and unpleasant, you find freedom. This approach keeps you from falling into the trap of extremes. The middle way is also about understanding that happiness doesn't come from external things. In the world, we often search for happiness through material possessions, relationships, or success. But the Buddha reminds us that true happiness doesn't depend on things outside of us. It comes from cultivating a peaceful mind, from letting go of unnecessary desires, and from living a life that aligns with our deepest values. The middle path also teaches us moderation. If we eat too much, we feel uncomfortable. If we eat too little, we weaken our body. The same applies to everything in life. If we sleep too much, we waste time. If we sleep too little, we exhaust ourselves. Buddhism teaches that moderation is the key to keeping our bodies and minds healthy. When you practice moderation, you allow yourself to enjoy life without overindulgence or deprivation. Now, let's talk about how the middle path applies to your emotional state. Impermanence. The key to letting go of sorrow. Life can often feel like a storm, with its unpredictable winds and constant changes. One day you might feel on top of the world, and the next, the weight of sadness pulls you down. But have you ever thought about why that happens? Why do we experience pain and joy, sometimes in such quick succession? The answer lies in one simple but powerful truth. Everything in life is impermanent. Imagine a flower. It blooms beautifully, radiating its colors to the world. But soon, it begins to wilt, and its petals fall to the ground. That flower does not last forever, but its beauty is not less real because of its short life. In the same way, the emotions we feel, both good and bad, are temporary. Just as the flower fades, our sadness, anger, and frustration will also pass. The key is to understand that everything changes, and nothing stays the same. When we are in the midst of sorrow, it feels like we are trapped in it forever. It feels as if the pain will never end, and we begin to believe that this is how things will always be. But Buddhism teaches us that suffering is not permanent. It is a part of life, but it will not last forever. The pain you feel today may seem overwhelming, but tomorrow it could be different. The world around us is constantly changing, and so are we. Let's consider another example. The waves in the ocean. They rise and crash, then they fade away. Each wave is different, yet they all share the same nature of impermanence. Just like the waves, our emotions rise and fall. There may be days when we feel overwhelmed by sadness, but we must remind ourselves that just like the waves, this feeling too will eventually pass. Understanding impermanence gives us the power to let go of our attachment to negative emotions. When we are in pain, we often hold on to it, thinking that it defines who we are. But Buddhism teaches us that our emotions do not define us. We are not our sorrow or our pain. We are more than that. Our true nature is not affected by temporary feelings. By accepting the impermanence of all things, we can begin to release our attachment to suffering. You might wonder, how do I let go of this pain? The answer is simple, by accepting that it won't last. When we accept that nothing is permanent, we stop holding on to things that cause us harm. Imagine holding a hot coal in your hand. It burns, and yet you continue to grip it because you are afraid to let go. But the moment you release the coal, the pain stops. Holding on to negative emotions is like holding that burning coal. The longer you hold on, the more it hurts. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting. It means releasing your grip and allowing the pain to fade, knowing that just as it came, it will also go. When we practice mindfulness and become more aware of the present moment, we can see the truth of impermanence more clearly. Instead of getting lost in the past or worrying about the future, we can focus on what is happening right now. If you're feeling sad, acknowledge the sadness. Don't judge it, don't push it away, but simply notice it. Recognize that this feeling is part of the flow of life, and it will eventually change. By observing your emotions without attachment, you allow them to come and go without getting stuck in them. There's another important aspect of impermanence that Buddhism teaches us. Life is full of cycles. Just as night follows day and the seasons change, our lives go through periods of growth and decline. We may have moments of happiness, followed by times of sadness, but this is not something to fear. It is a natural part of life's rhythm. Just as winter turns to spring and the cold fades into warmth, our difficult times will eventually give way to better days. This constant cycle of change is not something to resist. It is something to embrace. Understanding this can bring peace, knowing that no matter how hard things are now, change is coming. The Buddha spoke of the Four Noble Truths, which teach us that suffering is a part of life, but it is not permanent. Suffering arises from our attachments, our desire to hold on to things that are fleeting, such as our emotions, our possessions, or even our identity. But once we let go of these attachments, we are free. We stop trying to control what we cannot, and we accept life as it comes. When we live with this awareness, we are no longer afraid of change, because we understand that change is the nature of life. Let's take a moment to reflect on the simple truth that nothing stays the same. Look at the trees around you. In the spring, they bloom with vibrant flowers, and by autumn, their leaves fall to the ground. This process is not something to fear. It is simply the natural order of things. In the same way, our emotional states will change. Your pain today is not forever. You have the power to let go and trust in the natural flow of life. When we live with the awareness of impermanence, we begin to find peace. Instead of clinging to sadness or trying to escape it, we learn to accept it as part of the journey. This acceptance brings a sense of calm, knowing that everything is temporary. Life's challenges will come and go, but our inner peace can remain steady, like the deep waters of a lake that are unaffected by the wind on the surface. As you continue on your journey, remember this: everything is temporary, including your pain. You are not stuck. You are constantly moving, growing, and changing, just like the seasons. By embracing impermanence, you free yourself from the fear of suffering and open yourself to the possibility of healing and joy. Every day is a new opportunity for change, and each moment is a step closer to peace. So, the next time you feel overwhelmed by sadness, remember, this too shall pass. Embrace the impermanence of life, and you will find the strength to let go and move forward, rebuilding life with wisdom and gratitude. When life feels shattered, it can be hard to imagine ever rebuilding it. The pain of loss, confusion, or failure can seem endless. But there is always hope. Buddhism teaches us that the path to rebuilding isn't about avoiding the pain, but understanding it and learning from it. We have the power to rebuild ourselves, not by erasing our past, but by growing through it. In every struggle, there is a lesson. Even the darkest moments can be opportunities for growth. Take a moment to think about the challenges you've faced in life. When you look back, what lessons have those tough times taught you? They may not have been easy, but they have shaped who you are today. Understanding this is the first step in rebuilding. The Buddha spoke of suffering as a natural part of life, but he also showed us that suffering doesn't have to define us. It doesn't have to be the end. Just as a broken pot can be reformed into something new, our lives, too, can be rebuilt. The cracks we have are not signs of weakness. They are signs of our experiences, our learning, and our survival. When we embrace this truth, we can rebuild with wisdom. Gratitude is a powerful tool in this process. When everything feels broken, gratitude might be the last thing on your mind. But practicing gratitude helps us shift our focus. Instead of focusing on what we've lost, we begin to see what we still have. Gratitude turns our attention to the present moment, allowing us to appreciate the small things we often overlook. Even in the midst of hardship, there is always something to be thankful for. It might be the support of a friend, the beauty of nature, or simply the fact that you are still breathing. These little things can become the foundation for rebuilding your life. A wise teacher once said, "When we focus on what we don't have, we forget what we do." It's easy to fall into the trap of comparing ourselves to others or focusing on our shortcomings. But Buddhism teaches us that true happiness doesn't come from what we lack. It comes from appreciating what we already have. When we shift our mindset, we create room for peace and healing. One of the greatest gifts you can give yourself as you rebuild is to forgive. Holding on to anger, resentment, or regret only keeps us stuck. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting the wrongs done to us. It means freeing ourselves from the burden of carrying those hurts. By letting go of the past, we make space for new beginnings. Forgiveness is not just for others, it's for you too. It's a gift you give yourself to lighten your heart and move forward with peace. Buddhism also teaches us the importance of letting go of expectations. Often, our suffering comes from the gap between what we expect life to be and what it actually is. We want everything to go according to plan, but life has its own rhythm. When we can let go of rigid expectations, we open ourselves up to the natural flow of life. Instead of resisting, we learn to adapt and go with the current. This doesn't mean we don't set goals or dreams. It simply means we are not attached to the outcome. In your journey of rebuilding, remember to take small steps. Just like a seed growing into a tree, it doesn't happen overnight. You must nourish yourself with patience, kindness, and care. Healing takes time. Be gentle with yourself. Allow yourself to take breaks, to rest, and to reflect. Every small step forward is progress, even if it doesn't feel like it at first. Trust that the process is unfolding, even when it seems slow. Another important aspect of rebuilding is accepting the impermanence of life. Things will change. The seasons change, people change, and so do we. Nothing stays the same forever. This truth, while sometimes difficult, is actually a source of comfort. Because things change, no moment is permanent. If you're in a bad moment right now, it won't last forever. Change is inevitable. And this truth can help you move through difficult times with the knowledge that they will eventually pass. Finding purpose in the midst of rebuilding can also be transformative. When we feel lost or broken, it's easy to lose sight of why we're here. But our purpose isn't something we find outside ourselves, it's something we connect with deep within. Buddhism teaches that our purpose is to live with kindness, compassion, and wisdom. As you rebuild, ask yourself, how can I serve others? How can I bring peace and kindness into the world? Even small acts of kindness can help you reconnect with your sense of purpose and remind you that you are making a difference. You may also want to reflect on your past, not with regret, but with understanding. Look at the challenges you faced and ask yourself, what can I learn from this? How have these experiences shaped me? Sometimes, the greatest wisdom comes from our mistakes and our struggles. Embrace these lessons, for they are the keys to a stronger, wiser you. As you rebuild, remember that you are never alone. The Buddhist teachings remind us that we are all connected. Even in moments of isolation, you are part of a vast web of life. There are countless others who have walked a similar path, and their wisdom is available to you through teachings, books, and shared experiences. You don't have to figure it all out by yourself. Seek support when you need it, and be open to the guidance of others. And finally, never forget that the journey of rebuilding is a journey of self-discovery. The person you are becoming is not someone you need to find. It is someone you are already. The more you trust in yourself, the more you will uncover your true potential. You are not defined by your past. You are defined by how you move forward, step by step, with wisdom, love, and gratitude. In the end, rebuilding is not about perfection. It's about progress. It's about embracing the journey with all its ups and downs. So, as you continue to rebuild your life, remember that you are already whole. You are already enough. With wisdom, patience, and a grateful heart, you can build a life that is not only healed but also filled with purpose and joy. Final reflections. Awakening from the darkness. You've come so far. The journey through darkness to light is never easy, but you've reached a place where the clouds have started to part. Now, what do you do with this new understanding you've gained? Can you take all the lessons you've learned and truly transform your life? Yes, you can. But first, you must let go of the old habits and thoughts that kept you trapped. It's time to awaken. Imagine you've been walking through a long, cold winter. Each step has been hard, and your body has felt tired and frozen. But suddenly, you see a patch of sunlight. The warmth touches your skin, and it feels like the world is waking up again. You begin to move towards it. This sunlight is the wisdom you've gained, the lessons of Buddhism, and the clarity you now possess. Embrace it. Let it fill your life. The key to freedom lies in seeing the world not as something that controls you, but as something that is constantly changing. Yes, everything changes. The good and the bad, both will pass. When you understand this truth, you stop holding on to sadness or fear, because you know that nothing lasts forever. The pain you once felt, it is like a storm that passed through. It may have been powerful, but it has now faded. At the same time, joy too is fleeting. It doesn't stay forever, but it comes back in waves. Just as you no longer cling to sadness, you also don't need to hold on to happiness. You welcome both, knowing that they are simply passing moments, like clouds drifting across the sky. They are not yours to own, but simply things you experience. And by experiencing life this way, you free yourself from being controlled by either. Have you ever heard the saying, "This too shall pass"? It's true. When you are in the middle of depression or hardship, it can feel like you'll never get out. But that feeling is temporary. The wisdom of Buddhism teaches us to understand the impermanence of all things. When you truly accept this, you start to feel lighter. It's like the weight on your shoulders lifts because you no longer fear the storms of life. You know they will come, and you know they will go. Now, let's talk about compassion. Compassion isn't just for others. It is for yourself too. You've been hard on yourself, haven't you? You've judged yourself, doubted yourself, and maybe even hated yourself at times. But Buddhism shows you that compassion must begin within. How can you help others if you haven't learned to help yourself first? Be kind to yourself. Speak gently to yourself. Look at your struggles with the eyes of understanding, not judgment. You deserve love just as much as anyone else. When you look in the mirror, don't see your flaws. See the human being who has lived through so much and still stands strong. You've come through difficult times, and that strength is within you now. Recognize it. You are not broken, not defeated. You are simply evolving. The person you are now is not the person you will always be. You are constantly changing, growing, and learning. Let go of the idea that you must always be the same. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be present. Another powerful teaching of Buddhism is the idea of non-attachment. You may have attached yourself to sadness, to the identity of being depressed. But that is not who you are. It is just a feeling, a momentary experience. And guess what? It will pass. You don't need to hold on to that identity. You don't need to carry it with you. The more you detach from it, the lighter you will feel. You can choose to be free from the weight of your past, from your suffering. You are not bound by your experiences. You are free. The path to healing is not a straight line. It's full of twists and turns. Some days will be better than others. But that's okay. It's part of the journey. Don't rush to the end. Don't force yourself to be healed in a day. Healing takes time, and it happens in small steps. Celebrate those steps. Even if you have bad days, remember that you are still moving forward. One small step at a time, you are getting closer to peace. You might think that you need something external to change your mood. Maybe you feel like you need a person, a situation, or a success to make you happy. But happiness is not found outside of you. It is found within. The more you look for it externally, the more you will feel like it is always just out of reach. But when you look within, you realize it's been there all along. It's in your thoughts, your feelings, your breath, and your actions. Happiness is a state of mind, not a destination. Through mindfulness, you can practice being present. When you focus on the here and now, your worries about the future or regrets about the past fade away. You begin to experience life as it truly is, without all the layers of fear and anxiety that usually cloud your vision. Mindfulness helps you become aware of your thoughts without getting caught up in them. When you can do this, you stop being ruled by your emotions. You start to control them, rather than letting them control you. You might still wonder, is it really possible to be free from depression? Yes, it is. It takes work, it takes patience, and it takes a willingness to change. But with the teachings of Buddhism, you have the tools to do it. You have the wisdom to face your struggles with courage. You have the compassion to treat yourself kindly, and you have the power to transform your life, one thought at a time. If you ever find yourself slipping back into old patterns of depression, remember this. It is okay. You are human, but don't stay stuck there. Recognize it, accept it, and then let it go. Do not let it define you. It is simply a moment, and just like all moments, it will pass. Trust in the process. Trust in your ability to heal. You are capable of great things. You are capable of happiness. As we finish this journey together, remember that you are not alone. The path to healing is not easy, but it is always worth it. And every step you take is a step closer to the peace you seek. So, keep walking, keep breathing, keep living with the wisdom you've gained. The darkness will not last forever. And when the light comes, you will see the world in a whole new way. Take one last deep breath and embrace the truth. You are free. You are awake. You are healed. Keep this truth in your heart and carry it with you wherever you go. The journey is yours to continue, but now, you walk it with a light heart and a peaceful mind. The darkness has passed. The light is here,